Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday to you all. For anyone not familiar with Uncork, we're the first no-code application development platform purpose-built for large enterprises. We are a SaaS-based, single-tenant solution gives our clients flexibility to host their applications on a variety of cloud platforms in a number of different geographic locations. To date, over 3,000 designers and creators have been trained on Uncork at our clients and partners to put applications into production. We currently work with over 40 clients across a number of highly regulated and technically complex environments, including insurance, banking, wealth and asset management, government, and healthcare. So with that quick introduction on Cork, I'm now going to turn it over to Paul Newell. Thanks, Paul.
Hi, guys. So yeah, my name's Paul. I'm a senior product manager here at Uncork. I've been with the company for about 2 years now. And I actually lead all the product management efforts for like data modeling, our role-based access control functionality, all of our security integrations, as well as the workflow tool, which we'll be going over today. So first, I want to give a quick overview of workflow and why we built it. So workflow was conceived probably about 1.5 years ago. And we've been building and iterating on it for ever since that time and continue to expand its functionality. But I think we should first take an overview of like what are the challenges that come up in enterprise app development, especially in no and low code platforms. So one of them is understanding how different pieces of logic and user interface pieces within a single application all interact together. And this comes up a lot with both like building as, even if you're the only builder, right, your application becomes more and more complex and there's so many moving pieces. How do you understand continue to remember and understand how they all interact together and how the dependencies work? But also, especially when you're collaborating, as you know, almost all of our clients do, any one app is built by many different people and they need to collaborate and understand how all the pieces work together. So that's definitely one of the biggest challenges is a team understanding how all the pieces that they're working on work together. A secondary item would be interconnectivity across multiple apps. So another common thing is actually people oftentimes are building multiple apps on Uncork, and all of these apps actually need to interact and work together. So again, if you have lots of disparate pieces from multiple different applications, it can become super challenging, even more challenging to understand how all of these things work together. And then moving forward, once you've got the base applications in place within Uncork, of course, another key piece of delivering any application is interconnectivity with external systems, right? So this could include modern systems. This also can include legacy systems, as many of our clients do also need to engage with legacy systems. And so now we're bringing in like a third level of complexity, which is like managing these integrations with third parties. And that also bleeds into this fourth item, which not just building these integrations, but then also now the final frontier kind of that we've been working on recently is maintenance of those integrations as well, because now we're moving to a point where we have lots of clients who have like automated integrations, right, or things that need to run on a cadence. And those things, of course, need to be built, but also maintained. So if those automated processes fail or if they have problems or errors as any integration can, we need a quick way to have visibility into those and to address them. So these are all pieces that are a big challenge when developing applications, regardless, frankly, of whether it's no code or code. And these are some of the things that we looked to address with the workflow tool when we first built it and as we continue to extend it. So to give this a little more a specific example of how this would play out, when you're first building an application, right, you're thinking oftentimes of specific pieces of business logic or even specific UI elements, right? And that could be, a single page form. It could be something that calculates rates or things that, like a single API call that integrates with an external system. All these are like discrete pieces of functionality that you can already, without workflow, you could already build using modules today. And you could before we introduced workflow as well. And these are discrete pieces of logic, right? And here we have a single example, right, which is just a calculator. So I'm going to put in a name, I'm going to put in a salary, and then we have a logic component that's going to run in our modules, which are kind of allow you to build these discrete pieces of business logic, and it's going to output a premium. So it seems pretty straightforward. Shouldn't be a problem. It's again a single module. But the reality is once you've built that, right, there's of course a myriad of other things you need to build, right? Like you need to check the credit score for somebody potentially, or you need to send an email to a user, or you want to send an email to another party, like a broker, an underwriter who needs to come and review something, or you need a policy, or you need admin systems, right? To like go, you have many people that are going to use this form here, and you need like an administration screen to administer this and manage all of that. So very quickly you get to a situation that looks more like this, right? You have all of these disparate pieces of logic, and they all do interact together, but to understand how they do and to collaborate with that becomes increasingly more and more challenging. And so that's where workflow comes in, right? And so the goals of workflow, right, were to separate business logic from business process, right? So instead of just being focused on these disparate pieces of logic, right, we need to understand the higher level process and how all these things interact together. And then also, right, for allowing different users to be responsible for different parts of an application. So like we were saying, right, maybe I need to email an underwriter who needs to come in and interact on a different piece of this application or of this piece of data after somebody's already submitted it. You have multiple parties that need to come and interact and utilize the application you're building. And so this workflow also allows you to manage that. And then also to show a simplified high-level model. So this is, again, particularly important for collaboration. But when you have different people, oftentimes building these disparate pieces of business logic, you need a high-level way everyone can collaborate and understand and tie these pieces together. And of course, to continue to support creating modular chunks of functionality, right? I don't think the fact that, or we don't think the fact that business logic, right, is broken up into many pieces is a problem. It's actually really beneficial. It allows for collaboration. It allows for reusability. But we do need, at the end of the day, right, a high-level view and way to orchestrate these pieces that makes sense and is easy to manage. And again, this is where workflow comes in. So let's go ahead and just jump right into the tool and walk through some of the functionality and how it works and interacts with the rest of the Uncork platform, and then talk through some of like the current features that we're working on and building out and have recently released. And what I've loaded up here is Uncork staging. So this is our internal testing environment. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull up two things. So this is a kind of a blank new workflow that we've now created. And so this, I'm going to start by going through and building a couple different pieces so you can see all of the different functionality that we have with workflow and how it kind of works together with the rest of the platform. But to start, I'm actually going to go and we're going to go through some modules we've already built. And for the purpose of this demo, we've already built these modules out because, again, I think the point of workflow is to tie all these disparate pieces together in a really easy way. And so we can go in and jump in and take a look at what these modules look like. But I think the important piece is if, in this particular example, we're going to go through a credit card application process, right? So if I wanted to set up as a bank, I want to set up a flow for people to fill out an application for credit and also have an approval process if we need a reviewer to see if this person can get approved for a credit card or not. That's what we're going to walk through. And we already have, again, these screens and pieces of logic set up. So for example, we have this applicant information screen. Okay, so this applicant information screen looks like this today, right? So it's a screen. It has, our nice little Uncork card. It has fields for people to fill out their name and email address, social security, date of birth, all these different pieces that would be needed to potentially allow them to apply for credit. But of course, the issue here is that this is, just a single piece, right? Like we said, we need to be able to flag this so somebody could review it. We need to have logic to decide if they're approved or not. We probably need to go pull their credit score to check on that and see what the status of that is. And we need also additional pieces of communication and ways to interact with this user. So again, that's where workflow comes in. We're going to take these disparate screens and pieces and we're going to put them together in a way that allows for a fully functioning application and user flow. So one thing that the workflow does that's different than any other BPMN tool, which is business process management notation, and that's a very standard notation format that's used for these types of processes. But something that workflow's introduced as a tool is the ability to automate the user flow in the UI, in addition to having this high-level process view. And so what you'll see, right, is if we go back to this screen, again, there's no navigation here. So like if I were to go fill this out, what's going to happen is there's no buttons for me to navigate, of course, because there's no way for me to understand where this user should be going. And so what you'll see is when we go ahead and drag in a couple of these tasks, And I would say this is the most foundational piece of a workflow, which is the start, end node, and then these tasks, right? So these effectively are screens, or they could be automated processes that are going to run during as the workflow runs. So I'm going to just start out with these two screens and just connect them all together. And then I'm going to pull in these screens that we've previously made, right? So I'm going to go ahead, edit. And then I'm going to select, so I'm going to do a quick search for workflow webinar. And I'm going to go find, I have a welcome screen set up. So I'm going to pull that in. And then I'm also going to go ahead and pull in that user information screen that we were looking at before. So let's go ahead and search again for workflow webinar. So that is called the applicant information screen. So I'm going to pull that in as well. And one other thing I'm going to do is if I save this now, and I go ahead and preview my workflow, I'm going to actually switch to a different theme, which I can preview really easily using this bar at the top. So I'm going to switch to this theme. So another thing that you can do, right? So now you see a couple things that just happened, right? We have this top navigation here, right? And this is automatically generated for you. And then we also have these buttons here that allow the user to navigate. And all of that's automatically generated based off of your workflow. So you don't even need to worry about it. We automatically calculate everything and handle the navigation and any necessary restrictions to keep everything secure. And so I'm first of all going to go ahead and make some changes to the label so that this looks a little bit nicer. I'm going to just call this welcome. And what's going to happen when I change these things is when I go back to my workflow, you'll see this top navigation has that information in it. I'm going to go ahead and refresh it. And you'll see now it's a little bit more friendly. And another thing I'm going to do is I actually can change these buttons down here. So right now it just says next, and that's the default. But I can go ahead and change this and say get started, right? Because what we're doing here is putting together a welcome screen, right, for somebody who's potentially going to apply for this card. And so I might just want to customize that so it's a little more relevant to the user. And so they're on this welcome screen, and now you can see it says get started in this button. So what's going to happen now is when I hit get started, it's going to take me to that same application applicant information screen that we saw before, but now we have this nice navigation. We have the ability to go next and previous. And as you'll see as we continue on building out this workflow, you're going to see that I can actually allow for a much more fully fleshed out flow beyond just collecting this information. So that's the basic of user tasks. So these are user tasks, right? And you can see because they have this little user icon next to them. And they're in what we call user lanes, right? So this is only accessible to the authenticated role. These user lanes are going to be filled out by users who are authenticated to fill out a credit card application. And then you'll see down here, though, every workflow comes with what's called the automated lane, right? And this is where you can securely process automated things, right? So if you need to, for example, go check on their credit or run a calculation, something that's proprietary, all that can be run on our server completely securely and obfuscated away from the end user who would be filling out this application. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you an example of that now. So now that this user's filled out this information about themselves, right, what we want to do is go ahead and check their credit. And we want to check these details and see, are we okay with this user getting a credit card here? Or do we potentially need additional approval from another person at our company to confirm whether or not we want to extend credit to this person? Those are things that we need to suss out using one of these automated tasks to go and figure out, again, checking on their credit and other aspects of the applicant. So when I pull something in the automated lane, you'll notice it has this little icon here. We call these script tasks. And so I'm going to go ahead again and pull in a module that I've already prepared. So we'll call this workflow, again, it's workflow webinar. And this is going to be the approval check, I believe. So the approval, this is going to be the credit check. So this is going to go and again, this is an automated task, so no one will ever see this in the browser. It's going to run securely on our server, and it's going to go ahead and get their credit information based on their social, and it's going to, based off their income and their credit information, it's going to decide are they approved or not. And so at that point, I'm going to go ahead and save this real quick. Once we have that information, right, we then need to make a decision about whether we're going to approve them or not, or potentially send the application for review. So now I'm going to add in a gateway, right? And so gateways allow you to make these types of decisions, right? So I'm going to go ahead and link this to this gateway. And one other thing I'm going to do, and again, this is a new piece of functionality we launched recently, manual layout. And this allows, if you'd like to not use our auto layout engine and you want some tighter control over exactly how your workflow is going to look, especially important if it's going to be a visual tool for communication purposes, you can go ahead and turn on this manual layout option. And at this point, I'll actually be able to freely rearrange things however I want. And so I'm going to pull this over, and you'll now see, again, I have this gateway, and I need a couple of different, there's a couple of different things I need to do here. So one of them is I need to have an option of the user, either we already have a decision based off your credit, right? So this is like review needed, question mark, right? So now you can see that's nice and clear. So we need to decide, do we need further review from an internal employee on this application? If the answer is yes, we actually are going to go and allow a different role to review this application. And if no, we're going to go ahead and give the result to the end user immediately. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually add another lane, right? Another user lane. So this lane, right, is actually, as opposed to this authenticated user who's just filling out a credit card application, this lane, on the other hand, is actually going to be specifically for our approver, okay? So this is somebody at the company who needs to approve this credit card application, and I'm going to find that role in this list right here. And so the important piece here is that the end user won't be able to access anything in this lane. They can, of course, only access the things in their lane, and this lane is going to be for access by our approver role. And so I'm going to go ahead and make this one option, right? So I'll call this link needs review, okay? And then I'll go ahead and add this other link, and for now it's just going to end, but we will add some additional information here, or some additional functionality. And on this, we're going to say has result, right? So we already have a result, so we don't need an approver, right? Which this could be they're approved or they're not, and that could, like, we immediately might deny them access to a card if we already don't think that they're qualified based off of our credit check. But in this case, we do need a review. And so again, I'm going to pull into this. This is another user task. I'm going to pull in webinar. And this is going to be our approval check, right? And so this is going to be filled out again by an internal employee. And they're going to go and review this information that the end user has entered, and then they're going to decide to approve the user or not. Okay, so we're going to save that. And then depending on what this approver does, we're either going to then approve the user or not. So just to make this a valid workflow, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And so the way gateways work is you'll add a gateway in, and then you can have as many paths that come out, and you'll need a formula to decide if the formula will help decide which path we want the end user to go down, or we want the workflow to continue down, right? So you'll have two options when you set up one of these gateway links. One is to actually add some logic, add a formula. And so I have something that this module sets, which is the result field. The result field is going to either be set to true or false, right? And so what we're going to say is if the result field is set to true, right, we already have a result, we don't need a reviewer, we're going to go ahead and send them down this has result path. And then what we're going to do here is actually say, we're going to set this as the default path. And the way the default path works is if none of the other paths are true, we're going to go ahead and send them down the default path. And the reality is like, what the reason you do it this way, right, is if we are sure they have a result, right, we're going to send them down this path. But if either we know for certain that they need some sort of review, or if some other problem occurred, which can always happen, either way, in that case, of course, we want to send it down this review path so that it can be caught and we can handle that application. So in general, the default path can be really helpful as like a catch-all if you want that to be the path people go down in certain scenarios, in addition to if there's an error or something like that. And that's why we're going to use the default path here. Okay, so as we continue on, now we have these two paths we can go down, and then we're going to carry on at that point. So once we've had this approval and gone through there, at this point, the next step is, okay, so they've either been approved or rejected, right? And at this point, everyone has either been approved or rejected, either because they already had a result or because the approver has now given a result. So now we're gonna have a secondary gateway, and this is gonna decide what happens based off of if they were approved or rejected. So I'm gonna jump in, and I'm actually gonna connect both of these to this gateway. So I'm gonna delete these endnotes very quickly. And what I'm going to do now is, again, decide what is the experience at this point once the user has been approved or rejected. So I'm actually going to add some message nodes. So that's the next node we'll go over. And the message node allows for email or actually SMS as well to an end user. So we're going to go ahead and set these up real quick. And we're going to, again, at this point, we're going to actually send an email to the end user to let them know were they approved or not. Right, and so this flow right here is going to say approved, and this one right here is going to say rejected. And based off that approval or rejection, the user is going to receive an email. Now, for the sake of time, I have a pre-prepared example of this. So just to get things moving along, because I think we'd like to jump into more advanced topics as well. I'm going to actually pull up this exact workflow that we've already built. So again, you'll see the things you already recognize, the welcome screen, the applicant screen. You'll see this automated process. You'll see the same things that we've already been working on. And one thing that you'll see is different here. Again, we have these emails set up. And all of these is exactly what we just walked through, already set up and ready to go in the same way. The one extra thing we have is if I've been approved, right, we're actually going to show also a screen to the end user to let them know that they've been approved immediately, as opposed to waiting to receive an email. So this is our finished flow, already set up and ready to go. And what this is going to look like now, when I go ahead and preview it, and one thing I'm going to do is switch the style, of course, so it has our nicer Uncork styles as I preview it. And then I'm actually going to switch to the authenticated role. This allows me, this cool bar up here actually allows me to preview all these different roles. So in this case, I'm just going to be able to see the things in the authenticated lane as an authenticated user. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to enter a name. And actually, this email address will get picked up dynamically. So I am going to put my own email address. So this will decide who gets emailed, the approval or the rejection email. And then I'm going to go ahead and put an income in. And for the purpose of this demo, the way this calculator back here works in the script task is it actually is going to just be based off the salary, just for demo purposes to make it more straightforward. And so we're not hitting up credit score companies. We're going to go ahead, pretty much the way this works is I believe if it's up to 35,000, it's an instant rejection. If it's 35 to 72,000, we're going to need approval. And if it's above 72,000, we're going to just immediately approve. So to show you what that's going to look like, I'm actually going to go ahead and just enter 30,000. So I'm going to get an instant rejection. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to hit next as this end user applying for credit. And I'm immediately just going to see thank you for your submission, right? Which is pretty common. If in this case I've been rejected, I'm going to get an email. So I'll go ahead and check my email. And you'll see that I'm going to have received this "you were rejected" email, right? And this is coming from the message node. So you'll receive the reason for your rejection in the mail. I've been rejected as somebody applying for credit. If we go back and try that again, if I pull up this preview again, I could, for example, go ahead and switch this to authenticated again. And when I hit get started, you'll see now I could, for example, enter Sally A, and I'm going to again put my email address so I receive the result. And I'm going to put, for example, I'll put something like 50,000. And in this case, the expectation is that it needs an approval. So I'm going to hit next. And it says, thank you for applying, right? So this is me as the end user. I've applied, and it says we need further review by the team. So I'm going to have to wait. But what I'm going to do actually now is I'm going to switch the role, because I can do that, to the approver role. So I can see that approval screen. And you'll see now I'm seeing this approval screen. So this is what an internal employee would see, right? They're going to see this approval flow. And you'll see it's read-only, so they can't actually change any of the fields, but they can see them. But what I get to pick as an approval is, am I going to approve or reject? And I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to approve this for the end user. Okay, and it says thank you to the approver, they're done. And I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the authenticated user. And look, it says I was approved, right? And I'm also going to, of course, get an email to let me know that I was approved. So again, this is kind of a pretty complex flow, but it allows you to easily build it. You have multiple actors, and all these pieces work together, including the automated pieces. And so that's the basics of putting together a workflow application. What I'd now like to show you is actually some of our newer functionality, and that's specifically around building integrations and workflow. So once you've got these base applications together and you have these submissions and data points coming in, you're then going to want to start integrating with other systems. And a very common integration that is requested is the ability to actually export data, right? So this data now lives in on Quark. Of course, it can be integrated at any time, but maybe on a cadence, I want to send that information out to an external system. And so what I've put together here also, which we will go take a look at, is an example using our timer start node. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you how easy it is to build with the timer start node, and then I can show you a working example of how all these pieces could work together. So once I've started a new workflow again, and this is going to be an integration workflow, all I'm really going to need for an integration workflow is actually the automated lane, because it's all going to be automated. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these existing start and stop end nodes, and then I'm going to delete this user lane because we don't need a user lane. So we just have this automated lane now. And what I'm going to pull in is this new node we've just released called the timer start. And what the timer start's going to do is it's actually going to allow you to build automated jobs that run on a cadence, completely automated. So no user intervention or interaction is needed. So you can build any type of automated integration or any other type of automated job, frankly, that you want to build, including things that automate sending emails or automate, again, integrating with external systems. Or in this case, we're actually going to automate the export of data, and we're going to send it via SFTP to an external server. So I'm going to start by pulling in this timer start node. And when I edit it, I'm actually going to be able to, I'm going to give it a label. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say I actually want this to run every Sunday at 8 p.m., right? So now I've given it this nice friendly title. And what I can do down here is actually pick the cadence at which I want it to run. So we have two options here, relative and exact. And relative, again, is going to be based more off of like every X amount of minutes or every X amount of hours. So if I wanted to say just run this every 10 minutes, right, I could do that. Right? So it's not going to be based on a particular date or day of the week. It's just going to be every 10 minutes it's going to run. In this case, though, I want it every Sunday at 8 p.m., so I'm actually going to choose this exact option. So when I do that, you'll see the options change, and I can actually pick this frequency. So here we're going to pick weekly, and then I'm going to pick the day of the week, which is going to be Sunday. And then I'm going to use military time here, so I'm going to actually make this 20:00. So at 8 o'clock every Sunday, this is going to run. So I'm going to close that. Timer start node's good to go. Something that's extra cool about the timer start node is, again, because this is actually acting as an integration job builder, we have the ability to turn this on and off. So it has a state. So you'll see now it's kind of faded looking, and that's because it's off. But I can actually hit run once my workflow is valid, and it will actually turn on. And that's when this will be an active integration job that we've now built in workflow. So I'm actually going to pull in two tasks. And again, you'll see these are going to be automated script tasks, and I'm just going to have an end node. So it's pretty much as simple as that. And I have two modules set up here for this. I have a module that is set up to, which I will pull up very quickly. I have a module that's set up to get all of the new applications, right? So these would be all the new applications from the past week, and that would be applications for credit. So this is going to go ahead and retrieve all of those from our database. And then I have the secondary activity task that's going to actually go ahead and send those via SFTP to an external server. So it's going to first go and grab them, get a CSV file of these submissions or these applications, and then it's going to, again, like I said, we're going to use config in a module to go ahead and send them via SFTP. And again, this is all no code, and I can prove it by jumping into the modules pretty quickly. But again, this is all being done using just workflow and modules in Quark. So I'll just open this one real quick to give you a quick look of what that looks like. So we have a variety of pieces going on here. We're calculating a file name, but all of this is no code. And then we also have the file storage component, which is a newer component we have that allows you to interact with an SFTP server. So once all of these pieces are together, I can go ahead and I'll show you our active version of this. That's the wrong one. Here we go, down here. So our active version of this, you'll see once the job's been turned on, we have this nice green color, so it's active and running. And I, of course, at any time can turn it off if I'd like to. But what I'm actually going to go ahead and do is use an additional piece of functionality we have, which is a test run. So if I want to go ahead and test out this integration job and see that it's working, what I'm going to do, and I'm also going to change my share very quickly so I can give you a view of this SFTP server that I'm working with. So right now, let's see. I'm going to switch my share. I'm going to go ahead and share my whole screen. And you'll see I have this SFTP server loaded up. I'm going to refresh it so you can see that there's nothing on it currently. And so what I'm expecting to happen when I do this test run is I'm going to see a new file here that has the date and has an export of the past week's applications for credit. So I'm going to go ahead and do this test run. You'll see it says test run started. So now this is executing on the server. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this, and you'll see it's already populated. This has been sent via SFTP to this SFTP server, and I can go ahead and download this CSV, and it's going to have, again, all of the past applications that we've gotten from the past week. And you can see they're all in here with all the information that we've collected. And so this could be obviously exported to, an SFTP server anywhere, and collected and used. And again, all of this, like I said, was done with no code involved at all. It's all using Unquark modules and workflow, now this new timer start node to handle the scheduling and management of the execution. So yeah, so that's the timer start node and integrations and workflow. And what we're currently focused on is continuing to extend these integration options and workflow and make it a really powerful automated tool in addition to the powerful UX tool and UI tool that it already has been historically. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, I think we are all set.
Okay.
Thanks again, Paul, for the presentation today and answering all the questions. Thanks everybody for joining us. Everybody have a great weekend.